Hello everybody, I am the Dire Duck. After a long wait and much anticipation, the Murder Drones comic has finally released. Or, well, at least the first issue has, as it only covers the events of episode 1. There was a lot of speculation about the nature of this comic before it's released. What form would it take? Would it make any big changes to the story? Would it actually be good? All of that was up in the air, but now we can finally see. I intend to take you through the first issue of the comic, point out the differences it has with the canon show, and finally answer the big question, is it actually worth it? But before we begin, remember to like and subscribe and do all the other crazy stuff. And now, without further ado, let's get stuck in.
Bite me!
The comic begins basically the exact same way as the actual pilot of Murder Drones, with the only real difference is that we see a human kick over a worker drone. I guess that just proves that all the humans in this universe like to mistreat the workers. Except I guess Tessa.
You're...
The intro narration, school scene and nurse scene play out functionally identical to how they do in the actual show. With the first main change that we see is that they removed Uzi's getting ready scene before she heads out of the bunker. Which makes sense, as what does that scene really add? Clearly it was cut for time. Right after this, however, we get one of the few pieces of added on dialogue for this comic, with us getting a little scene of Uzi mocking the lack of security on her father's doors. In another small change, instead of the doors opening up to reveal Khan simply standing there, here in the comic, Khan sneaks up behind Uzi. They also add a little "Hey kiddo" onto his line. Apart from that though, we don't really see any other noteworthy changes right up until the point of N introducing V.
First, there's V.
Where he adds on some little tidbits about how he perceives her, with him stating they are kind of inseparable, partners in crime, and a real dynamic duo. Which I suppose that will become true in the future, but yeah, at this point N is a little bit delusional here.
V, stop!
Which isn't character for him, so it all checks out. From this point on, however, we have some much larger and more, interesting changes to the story. For example, in the comic, N actually beats Uzi back to the bunker and manages to storm it before she even gets inside. While yes, it certainly makes sense that N would be able to fly faster than Uzi's legs could carry her, my question is, how on earth did N actually manage to get inside the bunker? As if you remember from the pilot, which I'm hoping you do since you're watching this video, the reason he's even able to get inside in the first place is because Uzi opened the door and is unable to close it quick enough before N holds the door open. But if he gets there before Uzi gets there, are we supposed to assume they left the door open?
I've been trying to get past those doors for months.
Or worse, did the WDF just let N in?
Oh, alright. Just don't do it again. Get in here, you goobs.
I mean, I know the WDF aren't depicted to be the smartest people in the world, but you'd think they would at least close the bloody door. The comic also alters and removes some dialogue to fit with the new scene, with the notable standout being Uzi declaring that she wanted to use a murder as target practice, and her desire to save a member of the WDF, the unnamed one if you recall, before, you know. The changes the comic makes to the story only escalate from here, like for Khan, who in the show ends up freezing at the sight of N and then reluctantly shuts the door and leaves Uzi to die in the hopes of preserving the safety of the colony. However, in the comic, he simply runs away like a coward, which ends up stripping any nuance that the scene previously had. But the changes keep on coming. Another, quite frankly, bizarre change is that in the comic, N chooses not to hide Uzi when J and V show up, which means that J and V get to interact with Uzi a little bit more.
Ew, it didn't kill her.
Which is nice, except for the fact that both of them then choose not to kill her, instead just leaving her sitting on the floor, which makes no sense for either of them to do, especially when you consider that Jay's whole thing in the pilot is trying to kill as many worker drones as possible in order for their team to be the top team in the quarter. That, combined with the fact that V's whole thing in the pilot is to be the classic psycho murder girl who enjoys killing things.
And yet, I still feel nothing.
Frankly, I'm not sure why they even decided to make this change in the first place, as it really doesn't add a whole lot. Speaking of V, the comic also decided to have V disappear into the vents after Jay sticks N with the virus. This kind of undermines the idea that V did care for N, but was simply trying to keep him distant. like we found out in later episodes. But to be fair, I will be more forgiving as the show itself seemed to retcon V's motivations between the pilot and the rest of the series. Otherwise, it wouldn't really make much sense as to why V tried to murder N in the final battle of the pilot with so much gusto and glee. As you might have realized by now, it seems that in the comics' attempt to condense these scenes down, they end up breaking the plot in many ways. From this point though, the comic plays out mostly the same as the actual show, with a couple small changes. Like, for example, there was no attempt from Thad to actually fight off V, and instead of Uzi suffering from the yellow eye glitch at the end of the pilot, like in the show, Uzi goes full on Solver, which doesn't really seem quite right. And that's all the major changes between the show and the comic. As previously stated, there were a few more, but they are too minor to really be worth mentioning. I think that it is evident that most of the changes that were done for the comic were done for two main reasons. The first is their attempt to condense down the events of the pilot to make it more easily fit into one issue of a comic. The other reason is their attempts to clear up some of the lore discrepancies between the pilot and the rest of the series. While you could certainly argue that these changes are necessary, the issue with this approach is that the comic ends up losing a lot of the texture and detail that the original show had. That is not to mention that they end up making some of the lines the characters say not really make much sense. For example, Uzi's whole
"Put that conventionally attractive male down"
speech doesn't really work or hit as hard if V isn't actively trying to kill Thad, as they remove this panel in the comic. They do try to rectify it by changing the line from
"Put that conventionally attractive male down"
to "You leave that conventionally attractive man alone," but the line doesn't really work nearly as well. Speaking of Thad, he is apparently now named Chad according to the comic, which, while somewhat amusing, isn't really a great sign for the future and the quality of the comic going forward, when fairly basic mistakes like this are slipping past them. Hopefully this is just a one-off though. On the subject of changes, there is also the fact that some of the changes they do make, like the previously mentioned Carl running away and J and V choosing not to kill Uzi because she thought she would taste terrible, aren't really very good at all, at least not in my opinion, and actually damage the story and characters that are involved. So we're left with a version of the pilot with less content and arguably worse story decisions.
Hate to interrupt you, Dyer, but I just want to say, awesome video and all, but like episode 5 is still like the worst episode objectively in my opinion. So suck it, episode 5 fans. Nana boo boo. Okay, I'm out of here.
Which isn't ideal when you can simply pause this video right now, navigate to the top of the search bar and simply type in Murder Drones Pilot. And then you can watch the pilot with full 3D animation, voice acting, music and the like, all free of charge. As remember, we all have to pay for this comic. On the more positive side, we do get to see a lot of new Murder Drones artwork here, so let's talk about that. So the art is pretty good. While I myself would have infinitely preferred if we had Liam's art style, and frankly Liam drawing the comic himself, what we have here does have a certain charm to it, all of its own. Despite some questionable decisions with how some things are drawn, the artwork here has plenty of nice things to look at, and realistically is the main reason why you want to read this comic in the first place, as there really aren't many other incentives. But what should we conclude from all this? Well, the Murder Drones comic is realistically just an inferior version of the show itself. There are a few plot alterations that, to me, just make the story worse. Hopefully they feel more confident to actually add completely new scenes that weren't in the original show during the later issues, to really flesh out the world. Though, considering that this is a 6-issue comic with a bonus special making 7 that needs to cover an 8-episode series, I have a feeling that the trends we are seeing in the first issue are only going to continue, unfortunately. I could very much be proven wrong, so I guess we will have to wait and see. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. So what did you think of the comic? Do you think it was worth the cost and wait, or was it all just a big fat waste? Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, that'll be all from me. Remember to like and subscribe and do all the other things that every other YouTuber tells you to do. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, check out my other videos, some of which are even good. Maybe. Either way, I hope to see you all again very soon. Bye bye!